Hi everybody, Planet Jane here. I just wanted to let you know that the anime podcast you are about to hear deals directly and in some cases indirectly with sensitive topics such as PTSD, trauma, child neglect and abuse, sexual assault, and body horror. So if any of those things are a no-go topic for you, I would recommend maybe giving a pass on this one. And if you're alright with hearing all of those things, I hope you enjoy the podcast. Thank you. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Shambolic Anime Podcast, the anime podcast with no name, because we don't record it very often.
True.
I don't even remember which of my many names I use for this anymore, and that's my co-host, Sredni.
Hello.
I probably just went by Jane for these, right? Because that's the name I write my articles on. I don't know. Who fucking cares? We're here to talk about Alien 9 today, because I watched it recently, and read it recently. And we rewatched it recently and reread it recently.
Yes, indeed.
So, just to give us a baseline, I watched the OVA from, what is it, 2000?
2001.
2001. And I read the original manga, which is from 98. Is that also what you did? I didn't touch emulators or any of that.
Yeah, no. This time around, I did not go to the sort of sequel sort of things, which emulators came shortly afterwards. Sometime shortly after the specials aired. The pedant in me wants to be it is technically not an OVA because it aired on television first in 4 specials.
There is no universe where this can be the first thing we talk about.
No, okay. Of course
Especially not because we just spent 2.5 minutes trying to get our fucking audio synced. There is no universe.
No.
It says OVA on the analyst page. I'm calling them OVAs.
Fair enough. So, they aired, if I'm not mistaken, between, 2000 and 2001. Kind of a weird production because it was intended to be sort of a stealth pilot for, doing a full adaptation of the manga. But that, unfortunately, never happened.
I mean, they do get, what, about halfway through?
Yeah.
Almost a third?
Yeah, almost exactly halfway through the original run.
Yeah, okay.
Specifically, they adapt up to, with the final scene is at the beginning of chapter 15 of 30, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. So, do you want to give a rundown of the basics of what Alien 9 is, or should I do that?
I would be interested to see how you would summarize it.
All right. So, in broad terms, what we have here is a pretty typical Japanese high school setting, but this is never outright stated in the show. It is outright stated in the manga. It takes place sometime after a large scale alien invasion that has, we'll say, very strongly colored everyday life. Because the crux of the story is these 3 high school girls,
or
who
elementary school, technically last year.
Yeah, actually, no, they're middle
grade.
schoolers or something, right?
Yeah, 6th grade.
Yeah, fair enough. These young girls who are essentially drafted to fight aliens who sometimes randomly appear on school grounds. And this is considered in the world of the manga not that weird. Like it's sort of equivalent to being picked as like the, I don't know, the, I'm trying to think of a good metaphor here, like the friggin' hall monitor or something,
Yeah,
right? Like
basically, it's almost like one of
student
those.
council
Yeah,
is
or,
maybe the better comparison.
yeah, like you basically sort of the equivalent of, cleaning up after class, except in this case, you're running around with nets trying to catch weird little frightening alien creatures.
Sometimes not so little, but mostly little.
Mostly, but then every once in a while you get a biggin. And ooh boy, do they get a biggin.
We'll get to that.
God, like this, the sort of the fundamental mundanity of it is like established like right out the gate, and I'd actually forgotten how faithful the anime is to the initial chapters of the manga. Like it expands on certain things significantly, which we'll get to, but mostly is like beat for beat very similar. It's like, the opening scene is our protagonist Yuri Otani being voted by a huge margin as her class, and all the classes are incidentally named after flowers, which is typically a thing with apparently younger grades in Japan. She's in Camellia class. She is voted not quite unanimously, but like gets easily the largest.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, like
large margin to be the. What is it? Alien safety officer is the term
she's
they use, I think?
a member of the alien party for her class.
Yeah, okay. Which she then is introduced to the other two girls who are doing this, and there's a little bit of a monster of the weakness to it, but for the most part, it's about like the emotional journey of these three girls and how they cope with their very unusual situation, which is not to like put the cart before the horse, but it is like a metaphor for stuff.
Yeah. Oh boy, is it a metaphor for stuff?
It's a metaphor for a number of things. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. This series is one of the most like. It just is the themes, like almost anything I've ever read.
To start to get into like one early detail, when they're all being like shown their, I guess you'd say, equipment that they have for this alien hunting venture. The things that they have for this are these little frog-like aliens that go on their heads and like act as symbiotes, essentially. And the way that the symbiotes get their, nutrients that they need to function is that they lick the girls' backs, which is just unpleasant, and is also like very. It, probably like the earliest indication of like we're doing this kind of thing. By which I mean like, the show kind of, I would say broadly overall, sort of treats the aliens in general as a metaphor for, puberty and sexual awakening and all this other stuff, and it being very visceral and unpleasant is kind of reflective of the attitude of the main character, who Yuri is I have used the term the saddest and wettest cat of all time.
Yes. It is. She, like, which is underlined by the fact that, like, so the actresses who played the three main characters, who are Yuri, Kumi, and Kasumi, and we'll get to each of them, were all, Komi and Kasumi are played by, I think they were 18 and 19 at the time, but uh, Yuri's actress, Judy Ihata, I believe is her name,
Yeah.
was actually about Yuri's age when she played her. This was her breakout role, but she didn't actually go on to do a whole lot else. And it what doesn't seem to have been like that this was a deeply unpleasant experience or anything. She had like a blog for a while and sort of talked about that she actually quite liked working on Alien Nine as things. It's just that as she got older, like she sort of stopped acting in her 20s because she just had other stuff going on in her life and like was living a normal life of a woman in her 20s and just is very private.
Yeah, no, that
Yeah.
is fair.
And but
Um,
it carries across that she nails it. It's very natural in a very upsetting way.
yeah, it is very again, like a lot of this, even very early on, comes off as just like extremely upsetting and visceral, and like this is again just like a random detail as opposed to looking at the broad view of things. But in the first episode, like late in the first episode of the OVA, we see the like inside of the Borg when
Mm-hmm.
somebody lifts it up, and it's like this red, fleshy, pulsating thing, and it's just like, ugh. You know, it, in addition to the obvious connotations, it is just really good at getting the discomfort across. Like, yeah, I wouldn't want to have that thing on my head either.
Yeah, it's
Um,
like there's the bit at the very beginning with the percentages of in a poll of middle schoolers of not
yeah, there's like
wanting
an
to be in the alien,
infographic that we get shown.
of why they don't want to be in the alien party, and most of it is aliens are disgusting. I don't want one on my head. And
Yeah.
I think they say something like 12% answered, I would rather die.
Yeah. Which, uh, we'll get back to the
Yeah.
whole
It,
aliens as coming of age thing in
Yeah.
a minute, but generally speaking, to go back to the broad points, like the structure of this series is that they've got to, you know, capture. They're not supposed to kill them. They have to capture these aliens and put them in this like kennel, I guess you'd call it, that is on
Yeah.
school grounds. And I always forget the middle girl's name, Kumi. Kumi and Kasumi, the other two main characters, are like pretty good at this. Kasumi especially is like a natural at it.
Yes.
Yuri is not, and there is a prevailing feeling throughout the whole series of like we don't directly see it through Yuri's eyes, but like the way that it's presented feels very in tune with her point of view, as like
Mhm.
she is very keenly aware that this is something other people can do just fine, but she can't, and it's very frustrating to her. She spends a lot of the show and the manga talking about how scared she is, talking about how this sucks, how she'd rather be doing basically anything else.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Yeah, and
Um,
she does have a friend outside of the alien party, Mew, who's fairly
Yes.
important. Um, who is just like a very normal, upbeat, peppy kind of girl who does actually have a decent amount of importance, particularly in the anime with the third episode. We'll get to that. But like, there's like Yuri is this very normal, nice, sort of timid girl who is, put into this position with. On the one hand, you have Kumi, who actually, like, it's like kind of a blink and you miss it thing in the manga, but they mention their birth dates. Who she is like the tallest and seemingly most mature and sober of all of them, but is actually the youngest.
yeah.
And
Yeah, she is the youngest by a bit. Yep.
yeah, and she has been, because we find out that her father had passed away when she was very young.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that whole bit that you pointed out that's not in the anime but is in the manga, is the specific question when Miss Hisakawa, the manager of the alien party at the school,
Yes.
comes to
Who was
interview.
also a very prominent character.
Oh,
yeah.
yes. Asks, oh, did he die during first contact? And it was like,
Yeah.
no, it was cancer.
Yeah, which, this is not really super relevant, but by the way, hell of a thing to ask your kid, your student's parent.
Yeah. And Kumi's mother is fairly matter-of-fact about it. She is a writer of some sort. And there is some wild books on her shelf that you, like, when like, in the official translation of the manga, which you can just find online pretty easily because it's lapsed in license, they have like a whole section like noting the titles on the shelf, and it's like, an encyclopedia of the Cthulhu mythos, a bunch of writing on Freudian theory.
It's a bunch of stuff of like, by all appearances, Kumi's mom's main job is to write about the show she's in, which is pretty fun.
Yeah.
That's a joke. Sorry,
Yeah,
I feel the need to clarify that I'm making like a humorous statement and that's not actually in the show. Anyway.
No, but it is it is sort of funny that it's like, and in the interview included with Tomizawa, he mentions being heavily influenced by the Golden Age, well, post-Golden Age, sci-fi writer Larry Niven, and there's a copy of Ringworld, I think, on the shelf. So it's like, yeah, that makes sense.
I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't know anything about Larry Niven other than that he's the Ringworld guy.
I mean, I am not hugely familiar with his work. I'm mainly aware of it through its kind of like influence on other writers.
Fair.
But I do get the sense that like some of the stuff with like the themes of the way that humanity kind of gets bent through its contact with other things seems to be kind of reflected, like that might have been
That
something
makes sense,
Tomizawa found interesting, is where you have things that
we should
diverge.
we should get back to that because what you just said kind of touches on what is sort of like the main reveal, I guess you'd say, of the manga, which is that as things go on, it becomes obvious that these aliens are not actually just like appearing randomly. They are being put there by somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And the somebody turns out to be Megumi Hisakawa, their teacher, who literally, at one point we see her ordering them on what looks an awful lot like very early Amazon.
Yeah.
This whole thing is like part of some... We never learn the details because it's not that kind of series. But the broad implication seems to be that this whole thing is part of some kind of like weird proxy war that's going on, where there's these like different factions of aliens kind of vying for control of Earth in general, and maybe these high schools in particular for some reason. It's all very esoteric, but it does lend a really strong feeling of like, it's not just that Yuri is bad at this for some reason. It's like, oh, the system is like literally rigged. Like, they are,
it is.
She's kind of being set up to fail in a way.
Yes, and it's sort of specifically trying to push her into a very particular sort of position, which again, it's like we keep saying we'll get to it with things, but it's like it kind of is important to discuss how the show and the manga set this up, which is like
sure, of course,
you've
speak
got
on that.
sort of so through the first episode, what like you're kind of introduced to again to Kumi, who is very level-headed. Kind of finds Yuri very frustrating initially, and was noted by like a very early reviewer of the series of like the way that they talk to each other is that they exclusively use Otani-san, Kawamura-san, initially. And Yuri clings to Kumi, like out of fear. And Kumi, initially resents this, but grows to sort of be more understanding as time goes on. Whereas Kasumi, Kasumi's interesting. Extremely talented, buoyant little girl who is very tenacious. Clearly, there's a lot going on, which is not stated outright. She just sort of like mostly, talks about how enthusiastic she is about things, and
very much including the whole alien safety thing.
Whereas Kumi took up this job so she wouldn't have to be elected student council president and have to deal with other kids' problems again. Kasumi volunteered for the alien party because she's into it. There's a whole sequence where they have to catch these little weird rabbity creatures, and Kasumi absolutely relishes just like doing it should be noted that there's a certain amount of humor throughout like the whole manga, really, like this very dry, pitch black sense of humor, leaning into the absurdism of it all, but specifically the fact that they go around on fucking roller skates everywhere.
They do have roller skates. You become like inured to it after a little bit, but like they're epic sci-fi equipment that they use to catch aliens is like a butterfly net and roller skates. And really the Borg on their head, the Borg alien on their head is like the only thing that's like actually weird.
Yeah, also the little like goofy tranquilizer dart guns, which essentially are like
I forgot
little
about
Nerf
those.
guns.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
So yeah, it's just other than the Borg, which we should probably discuss like some of the stuff that the Borg do because it plays into what Kasumi is doing. She's doing like these ridiculous like rollerblading tricks, like she is just like skidding down the school what is it called? Like the banisters of the school staircases and stuff. Yeah. Just like having the time of her life doing this. And at one point they finally corner the last little funky rabbity creature and it jumps off the roof. And she leaps off the damn roof after it with this grin on her face, going, she's got like this vocal tick of going, "Nyah," like a cat. And
Kasumi is maybe my favorite character of the show. I haven't really thought about this, but she is
something.
She's very funny, which is a weird adjective to put to a character in this show, but it's true.
It is true. She is funny, and also as the show goes on, scary.
A little bit,
but yeah, because it leans into some of what is going on with her as it goes on, and it's like,
if you let society tell it, all funny women are scary. Don't laugh at that. That was terrible.
It was terrible, but I enjoyed it. As with so many things in life. Anyway, so Kasumi, she leaps off the roof, and the Borg, kind of like funky little, you know, uh, frog creatures latched to their heads like bicycle helmets with these wings, and from the wings sprout at these points these extending drills.
which in the anime are rendered in rather primitive CGI, which I kind of think adds to the effect.
Oh yeah, no, it's like it is. It adds to the alienness of them that they're fundamentally really weird. And she literally uses them to wrap around the small creature that she's catching and hold her to the wall as she's flying off. And then, like Kumi and Yuri are just looking over the edge, very impressed with her, and she's just going, "Wow, what a beautiful sunset."
Yeah, it's a very there's a lot of stuff like that in the show. Not necessarily specifically Kasumi doing things, although there is a fair bit of that too. But like, just these like very cartoony action sequences juxtaposed with things that are scary or beautiful or both. There's like I don't want to just sit here and recap the anime or the manga beat by beat.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of this stuff.
it's
And what again? We come back to the whole like the aliens or puberty thing, because in Yuri, Kumi, and Kasumi, you kind of see, like, not to get crass, but sort of three attitudes along a spectrum that young people have when they learn about sex for the first time.
yeah.
Where Yuri is, like, kind of just petrified of it and kind of wants to go back to how she was before she knew about any of this shit. Kumi, like, kind of reluctantly accepts that it's important and has a very in-betweeny relationship to it as in relation to the other two. And then Kasumi, of course, is just, like, absolutely thrilled. Like, again, to drive the metaphor home, she is, like, very in sync with her Borg and everything. Very enthusiastic about all of these things. And there's, like, a certain... Again, the word I keep coming back to is visceral. Just, like, this level of discomfort, because, like, Yuri, who is more or less the viewpoint character, she is not like that, and I don't think she ever actually says this, but there is a persistent sense that she feels like there's something wrong with herself because of this. And it's very sad.
It is.
It's rough.
And the kind of you there's also, it's particularly when you sort of realize as things progress with Kumi and Kasumi, is that both of them are holding back on some real, like, again, with Kumi, it's more explicitly stated is that she had to basically be an adult and sort of kind of an adult in the place of where her mother wasn't, like, terribly there.
Yeah.
Right? And so kind of has this stiff upper lip about many things. But, like, with Kasumi, it becomes clearer and clearer as the section covered by the anime goes on. And it's particularly evident in the anime, although it's definitely there in the manga, is the subtext of her crushing loneliness at her older brother leaving, which has some real weird maladaptive overtones to it.
Yeah.
That get really alarming by the end of the anime when
well, we can go.
stuff with
We
the
can
yellow
go
knife.
into
Yeah.
the big alien. Yeah, we can.
Oh,
we can go
the
into
yellow
that.
knife. Yeah, like
Very briefly. The rest of like the first part of the anime covers, as mentioned, all this stuff with the alien hunts. And then there's summer vacation.
yeah, which is kind of like a quiet release after something really fucking horrifying happens in the second episode, which is we should probably cover that before we get to the elephant.
We should. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
actually, good
like,
fucking point. The thing with the
three boys.
Yeah, I was gonna say they don't have like a easy group name, so I guess we'll just call them the boys. There's these three boys in their school who stumble upon like a different kind of symbiote alien that's been let loose. And they willingly put them on their heads and start attacking the girls. And
it's initially kind of funny, like it is, and especially the reaction. They seem to keep coming after Yuri, and Yuri notices this, but the other two kind of brush it off, kind of in a way, or at least Kumi does. Kasumi, it is a little more difficult to expect. Kasumi has like one of the best moments in that section, in the second episode, where at one point when the third, I believe it is the third boy to try to attack Yuri with these, again, drill symbiotes, but of a different type, comes after, she appears in a ballerina outfit, essentially. She has a tutu on and boxing gloves, and she's doing un, deux, trois, un, deux, trois, un, deux, trois, doing little spins, and then punches the kid in the jaw so hard the symbiote flies off his head.
It's a very good scene.
It is so good.
Which kind of cuts against the very horrifying nature of the boys' symbiotes, because, like, there is an overtone of sexual assault there.
Oh,
like
100%. Especially...
Of, like, here's these, things with these fucking, like, drill-tipped tentacles trying to attack this poor little girl, who, granted, has a thing with drill-tipped tentacles of her own on her head, but, it's not a perfect metaphor.
Yeah, it's
but
like
it's very...
It drives it home, though, most. After that happens, Yuri is, clinging to Kumi, who initially is, pushing her away and saying, just stop. Stop it. They're, essentially denying that the pattern is there in the first place. And then Kasumi kind of grabs her and shakes her and starts just making this nya noise. And it's very clear that, like, in her silliness, she is trying to get across to Kumi, actually, you should take this seriously, but she doesn't really have, like, a great grasp of communicating that. Like, she's almost certainly, like, there's some kind of implied neurodivergence there of some sort, but it's, like, not really spelled out at any point. Again, like, most of the stuff in the anime is subtext. It's like...
Honestly, like, the manga is more explicit, but only, like, by degrees. And the things that it's mostly more explicit about are, like... this is such a cringy term, but, like, lore.
Yeah, like
world building. It's like, world building, the actual term for that, yes.
Yeah,
but like stuff about like first contact invasion and all this. We don't get anything other than very strong and suggestive subtext about things like Kasumi being some sort of neurodivergent. The whole just aliens as coming of age thing in general. Like, that's all left very much implied.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
it leaves a lot to the reader and the viewer to sort
Yeah.
of basically put two and two together with
Yeah.
a lot of these things.
Which,
Like,
with in particular, like, not to keep harping on about this, but in particular, like, the sexual assault stuff, I think becomes very obvious during the summer vacation episode because of the dream sequence in that episode.
yes.
So if we want to
Oh yeah.
hop back over to that.
Yeah, so at the end of the second episode, one of the single gnarliest scenes, like, and by far the gnarliest scene up to that point, is the three boys, after being deeply bored, once again acquire the head aliens, and Yuri is sent to cover the sort of kennel area alone while Kumi and Kasumi are off, like doing some review for social studies. Actually, that's a whole bit. Like when was first contact? 1998. That sort of thing.
Yes, I was 4 years old on my grandfather's farm.
Indeed.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Hey, so sorry to interrupt the podcast for this. Audacity has just felt the need to tell me that I only have enough remaining disk space to record for another 110 hours. Okay.
Sure.
Anyway, continue.
Anyway, so Yuri is off feeding all these creatures in the kennels, including things like the weird headless punching centaur that at one point attacks one of the kindergarten classrooms doors earlier.
I like that thing. It reminds me of the falling star beast from Elden Ring. There's a comparison for someone listening to this.
I mean, my thought with like a lot of the creatures is that they feel, and it's appropriate given that the composer on the of the soundtrack to Alien 9, Kuniaki Hayashima, predominantly is known for, on the one hand, Monster, which, is a slightly better known show from the same period in anime circles. The other one is a lot of Toku stuff. And it's like, my thought is like, a lot of these monsters feel like they would be like dope tokusatsu monsters, right? Like little puppet monsters or like guys in funky suits. Like, you can see it, right?
Yeah, I mean, fair enough.
But although they are a little more grisly than that typically is the case. But she is just sort of feeding the beasts, kind of like, pouring out their kibble and whatnot. She finally gets finished. And then she realizes she is surrounded by the three creepy boys, who then proceed to attack her with the drills, sending their drills through the wings of her Borg, which proceeds to go into a frenzy as she is crying and going into shock. And it kills everything but the boys themselves in the entire kennel, starting with the aliens that attacked it, and then every single thing in there. And then the top half of it falls away. The thing, its mouth, its frog-like mouth just opens and opens, and then the lower half of it is just this white hair that turns into these drills. It just kills everything, reverts back to sort of hair for a bit, as Yuri walks out weeping, and Miss Hisakawa is standing there outside the door and is just horrified the realization of basically what she set up without really fully understanding what would happen, or maybe understanding more of it than she wanted to acknowledge. Because in the manga, it just straight up states that she gave those kids those things initially.
Yeah, it's very. Ooh, I rarely feel like angry at anime characters because they're not real people. They don't have any agency, right? The teacher from Alien 9 is a real fucking piece of work.
Yeah, and
she seems all horrified, and maybe she is like genuinely concerned for Yuri's safety on some level, but a lot of what she says. There's a bit where she's like at a like a little bar type place.
Yeah, at an izakaya.
A lot of what she says is like concern for like how her performance is going to be evaluated by her superiors, essentially. Which I tell you, it's not a flattering portrayal of a teacher, but it's not entirely an inaccurate one, depending on where you went to school.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, it's not great. But yeah, no, that scene at the end of episode 2 was very...
Yeah, and then it should be mentioned, she continues walking. She goes to the room where Kumi and Kasumi have been, because of the connection through the Borg, are psychically feeling her anguish and just crying and shaking.
There is like a limited telepathy thing going on with the Borg. Like, sometimes the mechanism is not explained.
Yeah,
but,
it is important, but it is not explained. And again, there are a lot of things in the show. Important, not explained. And that has apparently historically bothered a lot of people. I think it's great.
We are not here to box with ghosts.
No, we are not. So she walks into the room as having become this sort of like embodiment of sort of flailing defensive trauma. And the hair, this wafting white that surrounds her like a halo, turns into drills, kills both of their Borg. And then she keeps walking, and Miu is waiting for her, and was, they were gonna go after school to, go shopping together. And she breaks down, just sobbing incoherently, hugging Miu, falling to the floor as the thing falls off her head, dead. Mm-hmm. And that is the setup for over summer vacation.
The summer vacation episode, in contrast to all of that, is mostly relatively light.
Yeah, it is mostly a respite.
I'm not trying to put this person on blast, but it was a conversation I had recently. After I watched the show, a friend of mine did, and they were like, I kind of didn't really get the summer vacation episode. It sort of felt like, they didn't use the term filler, but they were like, it just kind of felt like not really anything. And I was a little surprised by that, just because I think the summer vacation episode is not the most important one, but like it's very crucial to like establishing how the relationship between the three changes. Because very quickly recap, basically what happens is they end up going to, I don't remember whose house it is. Is it Kasumi's?
Kasumi's summer house.
Yes. Yeah. For summer vacation. And they do all of this, like, like they become like actual like friends. They do all of this very like even to this day, like very stereotypically like slice of life anime kind of stuff. They They do like a test of courage in the woods at night. There's they hang out on the beach and all this other stuff.
Yeah, that is the area where the manga is most expanded upon in the anime. But thematically, it is
in the manga. That whole sequence is like it's like 2 pages, I think. 3 pages
in total, about 6. There is
it even that many? Okay.
There was a slightly different scene near the end, but the gist is very much the same, and it does incorporate sort of. There's also like this sort of bookending parts within the episode, which are like verbatim from the manga. Like when like sort of the stuff of them picking Yuri up. And also of Hisakawa regrowing the Borg from their fragments.
Yeah, that's what she's up to. That's what the teacher's up to.
Yeah, and she's
vacation.
Just kind of, it's like there's something fascinating about how like just clinical that whole thing is. While she's being like just sort of like acting like a beleaguered lab assistant, basically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what it reminds me of, and I think the comparison is intentional, it was just like a teacher complaining about having to grade papers over some vacation.
Even though she is literally dissolving the bodies of these sentient creatures to regrow them from eggs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In any case, for the most part, the summer vacation episode is fairly light.
Yes.
Kind of a breather, I guess you'd say, because then there's the 4th episode after that, which is very intense.
Oh, yeah.
But there's this bit toward the end where Yuri has a nightmare, and Yuri's dreams are kind of a recurring thing in the anime, and they are very authentically dreamlike and therefore very weird. Yes. But this one is notable because it is like very clearly her having a nightmare about the boys assaulting her, but because it's a dream, it's in these like very strange and abstract terms. Like I believe what actually literally happens in the dream is like she's dreaming. There's some other stuff before this, but she's like dreaming about being in like a swimming competition, and the like ropes floating in the pool, like those. You see them in like swimming pools, the ropes with like the blocks on them, like reel up and start attacking her, and it's very unpleasant. Like I'm making this sound almost ridiculous, but just like the way it's animated and presented is extremely upsetting. And it coming at the end of such a comparatively light episode is like
and
like she's made some emotional progress with her friends, but that incident like very clearly fucked her up, like even more than she was already not doing well.
And specifically like just that sort of first within the dream of the image of her like sort of turned away from the camera, sort of arms wrapped around herself, naked, standing in this pool with the sky like this blaze of orange and the pool this almost blue-black. And then we cut outside of it to her friends around her, Miyu sort of like patting her as she's sleeping, and Kumi and Kasumi crying because they have that connection there. And it's like, it is real rough. And then I think it is the scene immediately after that is one that's really important that actually gets echoed in the manga despite not being, in the original manga, although there's kind of a vaguely equivalent sort of thing going on, is when Kumi and Yuri get stuck in the rain, running to a bus stop. And they just have this quiet moment together, and you realize, like, there's been, like, something, like this sort of, that the tension between them has, gradually been softening, and particularly on Kumi's side of things. And Kumi sort of just, like, in this quiet moment when there's rain all around them in this bus shelter, wraps her arms around her. Yuri is sitting on a bench, and sort of hugs her, and Yuri just blushes deeply, and Kumi just reassures her that her friends, and particularly her, will be there for her. But the way that she says it is like very. It's like. And you see, like, the queer subtext is strong in the show, and it stops being subtext after a certain point in the manga. Particularly with Kumi, is that Kumi she kind of realizes in love with Yuri.
Yeah, no, it's...
And it's sad.
It is sad, because theirs is not a situation where that can develop in a healthy way.
It is like... I
want to say immediately after that is the scene where Yellowknife arrives, right?
Oh, yeah. That is when...
And that's when things just kind of go to shit.
And that's, the final episode of the anime, which is dealing with... The Yellowknife aliens are apparently a competing group to what are referred to as the Drill Clan later in the manga, which are the ones affiliated with the school. The Borg being, like a very notable example of them, of the Drill Clan. This Yellowknife, it's described as a botanical alien. It's basically, it grows from some kind of, essentially, plant matter, and they think that it latched onto a ship arriving. It wasn't supposed to be there. It was not planned to be there, and it's this enormous thing with a huge duck bill, and sitting on the roof.
Also kind of looks like a whale. It's a very strange-looking creature.
Deeply strange creature, with these eyes like a cuttlefish's eyes, which are enormous. Huge yellow creature with these sort of dangling tentacles with little men almost at the ends of it. Little dancer aliens at the end with little hands. And then we sort of get, like, in the beginning of the episode, we get, like, a little bit of a flashback to what precedes the very last scene of the third episode, which is of Kasumi kind of like becoming fascinated and preoccupied with it, and associating it very heavily with her absent brother.
Yeah,
and
which is
so in the very last scene of the third episode, in the middle of the night, she walks out without her Borg and goes over to meet her big brother, a.k.a. the Yellowknife, which sends down its little arms with its little marionettes at the end, which hold her daintily by each hand, and she flies up into the air and does a little spin, and it grabs her with its mouth and swallows her.
Yeah, it's very upsetting, and then the fucking credits roll. I want to show you something, okay? I, was tweeting, a little bit about this show on Blue Sky as I watched it.
Yeah.
I would like you to explain for the audience my last two tweets about this show, because I didn't write anything about episode 4 at all, because I was
I think Yuri's
too in the trenches at that point.
Also, I think Yuri's gay for Kumi, which honestly, good for her. True. Kind of wish you were in a happier show to enjoy that, but, still, true. And then the next tweet...
following tweet...
God damn it! And the eye of the Yellowknife and Kasumi with that smile on her face as she is walking out to meet it.
It's, the second the thing shows up, something bad is going to happen. It's a very different thing to actually see said bad thing happen.
Yeah.
In episode 4, I don't even know where to fucking start with episode 4. It is very odd.
It's it's basically the way that the Yellowknife works is it takes a sample, a person, and then it analyzes their thought patterns and finds what is important to them, particularly what they're afraid of, and uses a projection of that to defend itself. And what is Kasami's deepest fear is of being horribly alone.
Yeah.
And
so what it does, there's like a bunch of not very explained because the characters don't know how it works, so obviously we the audience don't get to know how it works. Psychic stuff going on where the Yellowknife starts like trapping people in these like illusory sort of dream states as the school commences the next day, and that includes the other two members of the alien party. So episode 4 is this very surreal, like, them trying to rescue Kasumi despite the fact that she is, inside this big whale thing and is being digested.
Or not even being digested.
Or something.
It is forming this sort of symbiotic link with her to use her to protect itself. And basically you have the way that it manifests with each of them, and it also is attacking other Borg users, which is to say the principal, who is a minor character initially, but
we need to explain this. Actually, we need to explain this if we're gonna bring it up.
And Miss Hisakawa,
as a plot detail,
but yes,
because this is never actually said outright in the anime, but you get a sense of it, and the manga explicitly confirms it. Evidently, over time, Borgs and their hosts like merge somehow
to some extent,
and fucking the teacher whose name I keep forgetting, Hisakawa, is someone who used to have a Borg, and it is now like part of her. As is the principal, as is presumably a fair number of people, because again there's this whole revelation that like Japan, or at least this section of it, or maybe the whole world, is like subjugated by this drill clan group, but other groups of aliens are like intruding on their territory, and the Yellowknife is the first instance we see of that.
And is interestingly one of the most benign.
Yes.
Which is...
But even so, it spends the episode throwing these very bizarre, like, hallucination worlds at the girls.
Yes.
There's, like I don't even know how to get into describing these. Maybe we could just skip that.
In the case of, like, Kumi, it's just sort of, in a way, reckoning with her sense of, like, loss, that she starts calling out for her father and then her mom. And it's like like all but, starting to, regress a bit, which, that, like, we'll get to that in the manga, but once her Borg speaks to her, and she actually, this is kind of interesting, is that, like, Kasumi is extremely in sync with her Borg initially, and the Borg and Kasumi's Borg refers to her as Kasumi Ojo-sama, like Princess Kasumi. It's cute, but it's like, in terms of like the closest relationship, and you see this in the manga, is that Kumi and her Borg, she sleeps cuddling it like a teddy bear. They are very close. And it
Yeah.
is the one that says to, it says to her, it keeps her grounded and tells her, I am with you.
Yeah.
Like, you are here, you are
It's
now,
again, it's an interesting spectrum of like.
Mhm.
I'm sorry to keep coming back to this, but it
Yeah.
is kind of the metaphor of the thing. Is
Yes.
like these varying outcomes based on
Like, how you relate
how.
to things like sexuality, puberty,
Yeah.
adulthood in general, these
Uh,
responsibilities that are thrust upon you.
yeah. Like, Kumi is not happy about these things, but she makes a kind of peace with it,
Mm-hmm.
which I think bears out toward like through episode 4 and
Yeah.
through the end of the manga.
Also, yeah.
Kasumi is like
Has a childish embrace of it.
yeah, I would almost say like a romanticized view
Mm-hmm.
of these things, which is a strange thing to say because again, she never says that, right? Because
No.
this isn't that kind of show.
It is.
But her like just willing to throw herself into the arms of this Yellowknife thing, and spoilers for the manga, symbiotize with it.
Mm-hmm.
The way that Hisakawa and some of the other adults have with the drill aliens. It does seem rather reckless.
And
Like
it's specifically a response to the fact that although she is, like whip smart and, just like talented at anything she puts her mind to, and has all of this privilege, like her family is incredibly well off, she is still like this very, very lonely person who has this weird, maladaptive, like it's subtextually incestuous preoccupation with her older brother, who is,
Yeah.
off overseas, and who apparently, like the way that it reads is, like apparently he said that he wasn't able to make it back to, like for Christmas, among other things, but it's like in a way that he seems to be holding her at arm's length for some reason, and it's like combined with that, it's like, ugh. And also with a particular thing that Yuri sees in the dreamscape during the 4th episode, which
Oh God. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
in which
You can go ahead and describe that because I don't want to think about it.
Kasumi is just sort of like, Yuri comes across the figure of Kasumi just sort of lying in a classroom and, seemingly contentedly dreaming. And she tries to wake her up, but doesn't work. And then something comes in with, it is shaped like a person mostly, which is specifically, it's shaped like her brother. What few things we see of him throughout the show, and in his sort of this gray hoodie. But the head is the Yellowknife's head. And it sort of puts its beak under her shirt and its head and starts to sink into her, and she just is saying, muttering, like about her brother contentedly,
Yeah,
under her breath.
It's nasty.
It is.
It's very the
Like, you don't
the
see much of it,
evocation.
but
No, like the show is. I don't want to say tasteful. What word am I looking for? Not gratuitous. Like this
not
is not
gratuitous.
intended to titillate you.
no,
obviously.
it's horrific.
But the evocation you get is that of like an abusive partner or something. It's very upsetting.
Yeah, it's
More so because, I mean, again, spoilers for the manga here, she never, like, does away with the Yellowknife, because after that story arc, and this is getting into the end of episode 4, this is the end of the anime, but after that story arc, the manga informs us they are symbiotized, again, like, as the Drill Clan
yeah.
does with the teachers and stuff. And this is like it's weird because she doesn't seem unhappy, but the situation doesn't really seem to be great for her either. It's a very weird and uncomfortable thing.
In a way,
it's not great.
It sort of has almost the subtext of someone who has been through something really horrible and just sort of, like, in a way that she's the first one, despite her sort of enthusiastically leaping into these things, she's the first one to fully own it, in a way.
Yeah.
I'm fucked up.
Which, I mean, in a sense, I respect.
And
but,
it's, she is a very interesting, nuanced character, while also being, like, just fucking weird. Especially because the way she handles some of these things, it does leak out into more ominous fashion, but we need to get to, like, really the end of where the anime is to get to that part. Which is... And there's so much weird stuff with, like, her trying to repel Kumi especially, but also Yuri, from, like, releasing her from inside of the Yellowknife through her face appearing over and over again on its side.
Yeah, which it's like kind of left intentionally ambiguous as to how much of that is actually Kasumi and how much of it is the Yellowknife projecting Kasumi,
yes.
But it's probably at least a little bit of both.
Yeah. Especially because, again, it's, it is, like, you kind of get the confirmation later that the line between the two has sort of disappeared.
Yeah. But no, go on. Yeah, the end of the OVA.
So they finally, Kumi is able to break through psychically to Yuri and drag her out of her little thing. And also you'll notice that that's the part where Yuri just starts calling her... She stopped herself the last time that she tried to, but, like, just starts calling her Kumi-chan consistently from there on out. It's actually a very heartwarming little moment there. And then they go to basically find... The Yellowknife has made itself seem to have disappeared, along with everyone else in the school building. But the thing is that it is physically there, even if they can't touch it, feel it, or, hear it, or smell it. Because apparently it does have a scent.
For all the SCP Wiki Foundation readers in the audience, I'm just going to say it has some weird anti-meme shit going on.
Yeah.
Actually, that's just a good shorthand for that.
Yes.
Kind of
It's like, but it does have a physical presence, and so they climb on top of it and just start wailing on it with their drills until it isn't able to keep up its psychic presence. And then sort of use the drills to cut Kasumi out of the side. Now, in the manga, she is fully clothed. In the anime, actually, they get a little more blunt, is that she is completely nude. She sort of slips out of it, does this death glare at Kumi, and then starts trying to strangle her to death.
Mm-hmm.
And Yuri has to
break them up.
Yeah, to keep Kumi's Borg from killing Kasumi, using her own Borg's drills. And then finally she also we get a hint of the, like, weird symbiosis thing when she is able to... Her hair transforms into the sort of weird pylons that come out of the back of the Yellowknife when it is emitting this force field, and she just blasts at them with it at one point. Specifically, she does that to disable Hisakawa, who is still up there.
Yeah.
And
it just sounds dumb, but I hadn't really thought of this until now. So I was stuck with hair in this series.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like it is.
thing with Yumi's Borg turning into like a big white mane, the drill hair, the weird like resonator coil hair that Kasumi gets.
Yeah, a
lot of hair.
Yeah, incidentally, that continues further with emulators, which it has been a while since I read it, but there's a character who's pretty fun, honestly, who we're not going to get into emulators because, again, Jane has not read this yet. I have some issues with like how fast the pacing is in it. It gets a little hectic, which is frustrating because there's a character they introduce in that one because it's goes into their middle school career, named Monami, who she's straight up a fucking chuny. Just like she's the fourth of the alien party. She is older than them, but she is just straight up an actual chunibyo. And she is persistently shown with her hair kind of like warping into these coils. It's a whole visual motif. And it kind of goes along with her whole deal. But anyway, is like, yeah, hair is
tangent on a tangent.
Yeah, tangent on a tangent. So they, Kasumi is recovering, quote unquote, in the school nurse's office. And the principal is giving Hisakawa something of a stern talking to and debriefing because this was not supposed to happen, and also the Yellowknife shouldn't be intruding on this part of their territory. And she's looking out at the stars and like, where did this come from? Who's fucking with us? Basically. Yeah. And then Yuri and Kumi are, getting dressed to go home. And Kumi calls her mom and says, "Yeah, Mom, everything's fine."
And she has her big old breakdown.
And then she just starts sobbing, and so is Yuri. And that's like the last bit of dialogue in the anime, is quote-unquote dialogue, is them both sobbing. And then, like, right before that, there's the whole thing of Kasumi's Borg talking to her, and it's like, "You are Kasumi, right?" And Kasumi giving this look, which is real weird.
I mean, again, like, as we know from the manga, which picks up pretty much immediately after the anime ends, that is because it kind of not anymore. Yeah. It kind of still is, but like,
it's like the
aforementioned symbiotizing, I don't think that's a word, whatever.
The symbiosis is between the Yellowknife and Kasumi, and so her poor Borg is just kind of left out and becomes kind of almost an appendage of her, which is grim. But that is not the last scene in the anime, which is as the heartbreaking
a little bit more
closing theme song plays. We see some days later at school, Yuri sort of sitting alone, and like they've sort of had to patch up Kumi's Borg due to the attack earlier, so she's without it going around the school, and then something happens which we do not see, and Kasumi finds Kumi dead. And that
is the end of the anime.
Yeah, the last shot we get is of Yuri realizing what's wrong, and then tears sliding down her face as she realizes there's been some kind of disruption.
Yeah. It's... What I will say, like I said earlier, we're not here to box with ghosts, and that's true. However, what I will say is I do have a measure of sympathy for people who maybe watched this and didn't know there was a manga or something of that nature. Because if that is all you have to end the story on, that is a pretty fucking rough note.
Yeah, it is.
There is no explanation for what happened. There is no indication of where things might go. It just stops. And the manga picks up pretty much right after that, and
Yes.
we do learn what happened. And spoiler alert: Kumi is actually not dead.
Well, she is and she
Well,
isn't.
I mean, she's not dead in the sense that she continues to be a character in the narrative, and also is like biologically alive in some sense of that time.
Yes,
That's
and
what we'll say.
she is both still, and that gets into some of the interesting stuff with being still yourself, yet also someone else after certain things happen to you. Like, and that's, we see that very evidently with Kasumi, but like with what happens to Kumi, it is. So, the first, in chapter 15, which begins on that scene, specifically...
I do want to say, we have passed a minute ago, like a bit ago, actually, already. We have passed the hour mark for recording, so I do want us to not spend too much time on the manga. So,
but
we should probably.
I do think that like it is worth getting into simply because there's some stuff that happens in the manga which I like. There's, yeah. How do I even with words? So, it literally opens with just that chapter. Can you imagine reading, I can't even remember what magazine this ran in, flipping to that page and Kumi is just fucking dead, right? And it's like, Jesus Christ. Yeah, I should probably, yeah, you're looking this up, good, okay.
Young Champion.
Oh, yeah. I can't remember if that's a seinen or a shonen magazine, technically.
It's a seinen magazine.
Yeah, it's like, strangely enough, emulators ran in a magazine that became a seinen magazine, but at the time was technically considered a shonen magazine, but those distinctions are irrelevant.
Fairly arbitrary anyway, and definitely not something we're going to get into at length in this episode.
Yeah, no, that's a topic for its own podcast. Or 10.
If you could.
Anyway, yeah, just imagine you're reading Young Champion and you just flip to the page with, I wonder what's happening in Alien 9. So you initially have this sense that Kasumi might be responsible for this because of her bizarre behavior. She is not. It was simply something random and horrible, which is an alien they were not expecting wandered in and fucking ate several of Kumi's organs.
As you do.
And so Hisakawa places Kumi in this sort of vat as quickly as possible.
Of the same type, which we must emphasize, of the same type that she used to regrow the Borgs earlier in the story.
And then pulls out these big kind of like almost gasoline canisters of what is cell gel for all your cell growing needs. And she grows back unusually quickly. Hisakawa and the principal notice. Like, she shouldn't be growing back and coming back that quickly. And she is, and we get sort of things from her perspective as this is happening, of her, like, coming back into partial consciousness and imagining herself as nothing but a head with nerves. And then the nerves are embraced by her Borg, which reconstructs her.
Yeah, this is also when the manga starts shifting to I don't know what term I would use. It's like a slightly cleaner presentation of the gore, which is such a strange distinction to make, but it feels very significant in the context of the story
Yeah,
because it's kind of where we start seeing things slightly more from the aliens' point of view. Uh,
yeah.
since, you know, spoiler alert, what happened there in the scene you were just describing is that Kasumi has merged with her Borg, not
Or
entirely
Kumi, but it's-
unlike, sorry, Kumi, has merged with her Borg, not entirely unlike what happened to the teacher, presumably at
yes.
some point.
Although even more extensively, we
Yes,
sort of
I was going to say that, yes.
yeah, it's like it is a more total thing in that, and it becomes evident in there's a following mini arc of sorts, which, going back to the weird stuff with the symbiosis and the trauma, like there is a partial symbiosis thing with basically anybody who has a Borg. It seems to be implied, because basically Yuri, apparently in some kind of effort to prove herself, goes out back into what is known as the Forest of Spaceships, which is apparently a place that has been ravaged by just things landing out there that, during first contact, that just you don't want to fuck with.
Yeah.
And she wanders out there, and she and her Borg become separated, and she, as a person, her memories become stuck in the Borg. And Yuri, the body, winds up back outside, completely through. Essentially, it's illustrating trauma-induced age regression. She's basically a baby, and they
Down to, like, literally crying and going, like, wah, and all this
and
stuff,
like
yes.
being functionally nonverbal, and
Yeah.
having to have other people dress her.
Yeah,
And-
God, there is this absolute, like, kind of horrible thing. Somebody, is it Kumi says? Of, like, do we even want to fix her because she might be happier this way or something? Somebody says something like that, and I forget who it is.
I can't remember who it is that says that.
Yeah.
But it's
Which, like, when even your friends think that about you, you know you've been having a tough time with things.
yeah, and it's like, and so Kumi and Kasumi go out to get the Borg, and we see how Kasumi has changed more directly in when she is attacked by these horrible mushroom-headed things with these crushing molars, which attack them and try to eat Yuri's Borg. And she is swarmed by them, and Kumi watches her cut her way out of them with her Borg's tendrils. And she...
Hold up. Okay, sorry, never mind, we're fine. I thought that my recording stopped, but it did not.
No.
Go on.
She chops her way out of these creatures, and is like, she just, and then the nya thing goes from being kind of funny and cute to scary when she does it. Like, she leaps out on those tendrils, and it's weird, it's like her Borg does not speak from any point thereon, but she uses it almost like another pair of arms. And it's just, and she, like, when she is confronted with the opportunity to just go ham on shit, she does. She is almost feral, and you can feel Kumi being like, just like, welp.
Yeah. And Kumi herself has not escaped unaltered.
No,
as we learn, she is now basically just like a human-shaped bundle of those weird drill tentacles.
Yeah, we see it specifically as one of those creatures tries to rip off one of her arms, and does, and the drills appear. And she just sort of, like, looks at it. And it's like, again, well... And then her comment in the beginning of another chapter is, like her, examining, like, moving her drills where her arm used to be in the air, going, I guess I'll never have a husband now. Which...
Yeah, which is...
combined with the other stuff...
sad.
Yeah. And then she begins living at Kasami's place. And then Kasami's sort of response to that whole sort of scene there initially is, well, now I'm not alone. And it's both in the sense of that the Yellowknife is with her all the time, but also now someone else is an alien, too.
Yeah, and they develop this thing over the remainder of the manga of, like, oh, we have to protect Yuri because she's the only one of us three who has not been turned into, like, an alien hybrid.
Yes.
In particular, Kumi is, like, very adamant about this.
And it's...
to a degree that seems influenced by her infatuation with Yuri.
Yeah, and particularly, there is a really haunting scene, which has stuck with me since the first time I read the manga, which is a mirror of that scene in the anime, which is where, one morning, quietly, Kumi sort of, like, sits behind Kasumi and wraps her drills around her, holding her close. And it is, and Kasumi seems like, in a way, simultaneously flattered, but it's also, she says to her, it's not me you want, it's Yuri. It's like, she's like, sort of politely pointing out to her as like, look, I appreciate this, but, you're not infatuated with me. You love her. And it is so sad.
Very sad.
And also, like, the way that, again, we were talking about this with the art style, is that Tomizawa's art style by that point has refined really nicely.
Yeah.
There's an interesting...
I have read some of his later work, including Milk Closet and most of the Yume Nikki manga, the official Yume Nikki manga, which is a thing that people have largely forgotten exists. And around that point is when it really starts looking like his work to me, in the sense of being like what I associate his art style with.
Yeah, like
it's very distinctive.
Yeah, especially there's an interesting detail I want to get into very briefly, which is I read a couple chapters of his first manga, which was a shonen series called shonen action adventure series called Treasure Hunter Jubei from 1994, when he was still working as an assistant for other people. And it's like, what is so weird about it is that, it is so unlike him in his later work in so many ways, for the most part, but there are certain things that have continuity, while the character design style sensibility is completely different, it is much more 80s, early 90s, action shonen kind of thing, visually. But the monster designs, where he's got, spider people and things, are very much like the creatures in Alien 9. Another thing is the way his paneling is very similar. The beats of, his sense of humor, how he'll set up a joke, are identical. And also, some of the more, little flashes of more visceral stuff are,
I see.
You can kind of, see... But then, so he takes this break of maybe, doing other stuff and regrouping, and then it's I want to do this. And Alien 9 is the
and honestly,
of that.
Everything I've seen from him since... We'll get back to the actual manga itself in a second, because I think there's really only the final arc to talk about yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, the final arc.
Final arc is a lot. Everything else I've read from him is in like direct continuity with that.
Yes.
Like Milk Closet is. It's been years since I've read it. I should really read it again at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But Milk Closet is like a pretty direct continuation of some of these same ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and especially visually speaking, from Alien 9. And in fact, if you read the official translation of the manga, which is very easy to find online because it's been out of print for like 15 years, there are interviews with him in like the back matter, and he mentions Milk Closet as the thing that he's like currently working on at that time. And again, you can see like an interplay of just different, like the continuity of like aesthetics and such.
And then much later, oh god, what is the title of it?
Tokumu Hokokan Yumihari
Yeah,
is the thing that you're thinking of, which is a, if you can believe it, much fucking weirder manga about like, I don't even know how to begin describing.
That's for a different podcast.
Special Duty Roaring Warship Yumihari, as it is apparently probably unofficially known in English.
Yeah, the late Tomizawa, which includes like the second sequel to Alien 9, Alien 9 Next, which I have not read yet. Apparently gets like, the guy really leaned into the weird, which he's good at. You know, it's like there is some okay, like let's get to the final arc in the original run of Alien 9.
The flower aliens.
Oh god. See, like there's the recurring visual motif again of flowers, and there's the whole thing with the flower theming of the classes. In the anime, there are the dream sequences with the flowers.
Always have flowers, yeah.
Yeah, and there's and the final kind of point at which it comes to a head of like the stress that Yuri has been under when she finally kind of snaps is she is given an overture by the Sunflower Clan, who there's kind of a running thing as this happens of like these sequences of Hisakawa talking very frankly with Kumi about like the whole situation.
Again, another very direct parallel to the aliens are sex. Like
or even like the aliens are in some sense queerness to some degree. Like that or things you realize.
Getting out of that like a little bit, you could see it as somebody trying to counsel like someone who's been through a like trauma that they have also been through. You can see it as that. It is definitely the most human Hisakawa ever feels as a character.
It is the point where you realize that, like, for the awful shit that she does, like actual adults who do shitty things a lot of the time, it's partly is somebody just kind of reproducing the shitty stuff that happened to them and thinking it's normal.
Yeah, which, if you're me, in addition to all of that, it does kind of make you wonder how long exactly all of this has been going on. Yeah. Because I don't think we ever get a current year.
We do get an idea that it's somewhere in the 2010s, like about, going by when the birth date's about 2014. So it's been like 16 years that aliens have been on Earth.
Yeah, that's fair.
Hisakawa is like relatively young, like she's about like our age, maybe.
Old enough we're in our 30s.
Yeah.
Shocker. Old enough that young enough that she could have been in one of the earlier versions of this whole system.
That's definitely,
it gets the wheels a turning.
Yeah. That's definitely implied, I think, is that either that or like she was maybe a little older, but still it's like she is kind of reproducing these things, but she is not without sympathy. She's just like, again,
She
it's been
doesn't
normalized to her.
have, yeah, like, she doesn't have. This is unfortunately also very true to life.
Yeah.
She does not have the tools she would need to get Kumi out of this situation. So the best she can do is like offering advice on how to live with it,
Yeah.
which is very sad and unfortunately very realistic.
Yes, and you get these scenes at the end of each chapter of them talking in like a restaurant and just sort
Yeah.
of like, I think it's like one of those, sort of like Japanese family restaurants, which are,
It's like a Denny's or
yeah,
something.
like a Denny's, yeah. Like, and they're just kind of, and it's these very quiet sort of dialogue scenes that contrast with how more and more extreme things get in the manga, like the rest of the chapters.
Yeah.
Like, because so the Sunflower Clan scare the ever loving shit out of the Drill Clan because they are very violent, and
They are nasty.
yeah, they use people like puppets.
Yeah, to a much greater degree than we've seen from any of the
Yeah.
other aliens, which is like, I think this is said explicitly. It's that, or at least the idea is brought up in universe, is that unlike the aliens that are content to be symbiotic with humans,
Yeah.
sunflowers just basically drain them dry and then move on to the next
Yes,
person. Like,
they're parasitic.
they are, yeah. And unfortunately, the last arc of the story involves one of them getting on Yuri,
and it,
which,
yeah. It basically puts her into this, sort of mind space where she thinks that she is, just sort of like trying to bring her friends into something, like to, like, oh, I'm finally, safe and comfortable, and, you should be like me. Which is, like, basically almost the projection of her fears outward and reproducing
on
those
the
things.
other people.
Yeah.
It's very upsetting. And
Yeah.
again, there is this whole mechanism the aliens use of like inducing hallucinations in their hosts, where Yuri starts to hallucinate that the aliens are humans.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they look the same, but she thinks that they're humans, and that she's defending them from her human friends.
Mm-hmm.
And it she has these visions of like killing her friends.
Yeah, and that's
on their behalf.
The very final part is like this vision that they're trying to use as this thing is clamped to her head. Which in the way that the Borg has the sort of wings, they're more like ladybugs, but with these pedal-like extensions which wrap around things. And can also shoot out this horrible, like, garrote from their front to wrap around something and cut it apart. And at one point they attack Kumi and cut through her drills, and then her drills just come back. It is very... But in the meantime, like, at one point she is just... And there's, like, a little sketch that alludes to it at a different... Like, in one of the end papers of the manga, is her just with, like, no arms or legs, just kind of looking... like, dejected, staring at Yuri. And it's, like, just, ugh. But then, so finally, the last sort of thing is the series of visions where she's going to... She imagines herself, like, going to this ruined school inhabited by the sunflower aliens who are just her classmates, and protecting them from quote-unquote aliens. The first one is Miyu, or a vision of Miyu, and she strangles Miyu with this garrote thing in this hallway that is being slowly consumed by vegetation and destroyed by water and all this. And Miyu says, as this is happening, well, this is bizarre. Like, she's acting like almost normal within the dream. And then there is the second kind of thing of Kasumi, who is trying to snap her out of it as she's becoming more and more transformed into this ladybug flower thing, and upon strangling her, just like you do realize that none of this is real. And then finally, as we see outside of this, like everyone is trying to break through to her, including her Borg and also Kumi start to connect and enter into the thing. And so the vision of Kumi that appears, in this, this, the hallucination is almost disintegrating as it consumes her more and more, as she is transformed more and more. That Kumi in the dream, in a way, is the Kumi outside. There is the connection very directly. Mm-hmm. And that her own, Borg intervenes in the hallucination to protect Kumi, Yuri's Borg.
Mm-hmm. There is, I think the, deeper implication of all this is that Kumi is the one person who,
can get through to her.
Meaningfully connects to Yuri.
Yeah.
Which is not to say that the other people don't care about her necessarily. It's just
she is the closest to heart.
Yeah.
And that becomes very literal when, in holding her in the real world, Kumi kisses Yuri. And it's while simultaneously making that connection, it's on the one hand, probably not a great thing to do to an unconscious person. But on the other hand, the sort of breaking of the barrier there between the real and the dream, in a way, and then making it very explicit of, that sort of... There's a lot going on in that scene right there.
Yeah.
Of when...
Yeah.
It is... Man,
It is an interesting culmination in, all of the various different things that Alien 9 is about / can be about, because the thing with work like this that is highly symbolic and up to interpretation is that the things that seem obvious to us might be interpreted differently by other people.
Oh, absolutely.
But at least to me, and I get the impression this is also how you feel, there is a sense of the bad thing ends, at least partly because the two of them have this genuine connection that is something other than what the system has planned for them.
Yes.
It's something other than, in the text of the series, something other than, become an alien symbiote.
Yeah.
The subtext of the series is something other than, comp het, I guess. Various other interpretations one could make, for sure, but that's kind of where I was at, and sort of where I'm still at with the manga. I don't want to just stop us here, because I do think I would like to talk at least a little bit more about the work on the whole, just because I think something about stuff like this that appeals to me is that because it is like that, you can kind of bring your own experiences to it, which, in a sense, it does make talking about them a little bit difficult compared to some stuff that's maybe more straightforward, but I don't know, I think it's a good thing overall. What do you think?
Yeah, it is...
I feel like I'm rambling, kind of.
I know, I understand. It's the fact that it is... It gets back to, the sort of thing that, I sort of seek out in how I connect to art in general, is this sort of desire to, rather than, go into, what is this trying to say in, kind of, excavating that, rather instead kind of,
didactic sense, yeah.
What did it make me feel, and then kind of describing that and getting into that,
I more than anything else I've said in this recording, I when I finished the OVA, my immediate comparison was not anything symbolic. It was just that it like felt like opening a window on a cold night and being like, wow, it's really fucking cold outside.
Yeah.
Like, just this sense of clarity, not necessarily in a super pleasant way, but just this, like, inrush of stopping force
Yes.
of, you know, this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Do what you want with it.
Exactly.
Which I think is really powerful and interesting. It makes me kind of sad. I feel like I've forgotten the man's name yet again. 1 second. I feel like Tomizawa has kind of gotten written out of history a little bit, which is sad.
Yeah, it's
because he's not an uninfluential figure.
Oh no.
Like, maybe this is my own perception, but I do see echoes of his style in a younger generation of mangaka who do work that is largely less overtly violent, but often feels like it's in sort of a similar headspace.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm reading Shimeji Simulation right now,
Oh,
and I have
yeah.
no idea if TK Miz is a Tomizawa fan, but it does feel like there's a connection there.
Oh, absolutely.
Of this like highly abstract work that is working on an existing template, but is very different from most of the stuff in it. Because we didn't touch on this at all. A lot of people, because I looked up some older reviews, and I even looked at the fucking TV Tropes page. A lot of people think of Alien 9, or at least did, in the context of it being like a magical girl series.
No.
It's not a comparison I ever would have drawn.
There are aspects of it which kind of have like parallel.
Yeah,
it's like my immediate reaction there was no, but it's like also there are
parallels. My immediate reaction was no too, and then I thought about it a little more, and I was like, well,
like it makes it makes actually more sense to understand in that tradition than it does like a lot of people interpreting it as being like related to like the sort of mon catching type things, which I've also seen, which I think
that seems very wrong.
No, it's like insofar as the fun with weird monster designs, sure, but that's about it. Whereas with the magical girl stuff, is like
the interesting thing
thematically.
To me, the interesting thing to me is you can tell right when all of these comments were made, because this was the timbre of any discourse about anime with young girls fighting monsters in like a morally dubious way, which there's more than those than you might think. Everybody, at least a couple people I saw who were like, oh, it's kind of like prefiguring Madoka Magica. And I don't think that's true, but I do get where those people are coming from, kind of.
Like,
it's like Madoka is, for one thing, Madoka's less subtle. But that's not an insult. I like Madoka a lot.
It's like, I love Madoka. It's just, it's less subtle.
Yeah, but there is a commonality there. So I look at that, and I look at these younger mangaka like NTK Miz, or Imitation Crystal is another one who I would say a very evident influence, if not influence, at least like convergent evolution on some of the same ideas.
Oh, and then also, like, to my understanding, like, a common comparison is to a lot of Tsubana's work.
Tsubana, absolutely.
Yeah, and
I can't believe I didn't think of that.
And also, like...
Tsubana, I would say that if you want, like, a spiritual successor to Alien 9, you should read Wakusei Closet, because that is a very similar thing, dealing with a lot of the same themes, even. That one is just more like, what am I trying to say here? That one is a bit more explicitly cosmic horror.
That's also true of the other one that kind of like comes to mind is Akihito Tsukushi with Made in Abyss has actually like a fair amount
I could see that.
of thematic
absolutely.
overlap with the sort of liminality of adolescence and also just the really visceral stuff, like the creature stuff. I would not be surprised at all if Tsukushi, who started to get into like doing doujin stuff in the like late 2000s, was at least partly influenced by Tomizawa's work. Like again with like a lot of these mangaka, there's that kind of like very bubbly, abstracted, cute, but in a kind of a skew way with the character designs.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And like that, in a way, like an artist friend of mine once said that like cute things and grotesque things are actually really similar when it comes to proportion stuff. Like because baby animals have like weirdly big eyes, for example, and have all these things protruding, and it's like there's a line.
It's the same thing as like you'll get this reaction from people who don't really watch anime. They'll like be off put by like the big eyes and stuff. And I kind of think Tomizawa's work, especially his artwork, is sort of a deliberate invocation of that effect to some degree, of like moe to the point of it being eerie.
Exactly. It's like,
especially in Alien 9 specifically, especially with Kasumi.
Oh yeah, Kasumi. Like as it goes on, like especially like as they kind of like he kind of makes her eyebrows slightly bigger as the thing goes on. And she's got...
Oh, I'm not going to lie to you, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's a fairly subtle design thing.
Speaking of eyebrows, there's a really funny thing in the back matter of the manga where there's like this retrospective framing of the whole manga as a movie, and it ends with profiles of the actors, which you might think are somehow related to the voice actors with the anime, but they're not. They're just completely made up. And Kasumi's Kasumi's actress's thing is something about like, oh, she was sad she had to shave her eyebrows, and it's like, okay.
And also it's like each of them sort of being like, you know, like how they relate to their characters. It's very funny, honestly.
It's a fucking fantastic bit.
Yeah. And especially after how like when you talk about like the feeling of ending the show, feeling like opening up a window into the cold night and that bracing feeling, the last panel of the manga where it's like, because they're like, you know, at the end, you know, in classic Toxic Yuri polycule fashion, they all wind up living together. And, you know, Kasumi and Kumi are making breakfast, and Kumi wants to, you know, wake Yuri up, but, you know, that like she needs more sleep. And Yuri wakes up finally, and she's like noticing that her hair is curling into a drill.
Yep.
And it's like, and her Borg had died during that final confrontation with the Sunflower Clan, like after she gets snapped out of it. But it's like, oh, huh.
Yep. That is the note that the manga ends on until Emulators, which I haven't read.
Yeah, and
to understand is kind of polarizing.
Emulators is worth reading, but it's a hell of a thing.
I'll read it. I'll probably read it.
I've heard that Next is even more polarizing, frankly.
Magi Simulation. I don't know, but yeah, that is fair. That is very fair.
Yeah, and
if I want to end this on any particular like grand statement, it's just that Alien 9 is like really good and interesting.
Yeah.
I'm a little out of it. It was pretty early in the morning when we started recording this, and it's
1:04 in the afternoon
now, but yeah, your time zone.
Well, yeah, no,
but I do worry I've maybe been a bit too rambly or something.
No,
but
I think you're fine, but then I ramble all the time, so... But then...
What I appreciate is that you have a memory for detail, which I super don't.
Yeah. I didn't even get to, like, bringing up one of the gags from the manga that I thought was a pretty good bit that, like, is left out of the anime just for time, which is the bit that when Hisakawa visits each of them, and gets, like, is scoping them out, is that each time the Borg opens, when their Borg opens the door, and it's like, and then they say, the Borg says, "Nice reconnaissance," and she says, "Nice guard work," and, basically gritting her teeth, and then the third time when Yuri's Borg does it, she's like, basically, "Could you get a different bit, please?"
Yeah. This is a funny thing about just, like, this is so tangential, but it's just, like, a funny thing about how, like, the way language shifts even over relatively short periods of times. There's an instance in the official translation where Hisakawa uses the word rap to mean have a conversation with.
Yeah.
People do not say that anymore.
Yeah, that's, like... There are like a handful of contexts where you say someone, will say something like that, but it's very dated nowadays. But it kind of, like, at the same time...
It has a real, like, youth camp counselor vibe.
Which is perfect given the character.
Like, weirdly it fits.
Like, that she is, again, somebody who does great harm while being well-meaning at the same time. And it's just like, it's perfect that she uses really out-of-date slang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey kids, do you know who you should really form a symbiotic relationship with? That's right, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Also, given that in one of the, like, sort of chapter opening illustrations, the principal is portrayed in, like, this crazy cult priestess robe, because that's the chapter where she resurrects.
Yeah, no. The chapter, like the page.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will. Well, I was going to lie to everyone and say I'll put it up on screen. I'm not going to do that. It's the opening to chapter 18, if you want to look this up.
Like...
This picture, right?
Yes, it's so good.
I posted that on my Blue Sky, and I was like, kind of a gender.
Yes,
and I stand by that.
Yes,
I would own everything in this image, given a limitless amount of money.
It's great. It's like, but it really does.
Even the big Ankh door knocker necklace.
But yeah, like. It does sort of, like, drill into the fact that... It's, like, it drills into the fact that, like, there is this kind of character to, like, some of the stuff that goes on, like, while it is, like, very distinctly more science fictional, that there is, like, almost a supernatural aspect to, like, some of the weird shit going on, like... because of the lack of explanation.
Yeah. Which I actually appreciate, because it makes it feel way more, like, surreal and appropriately enough alien.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, people will call this a cosmic horror series sometimes, and I think that makes sense, given everything.
It's like cosmic horror as a way of getting into these themes, and...
These terrible, terrible themes.
Yeah, like, with... same thing with the body horror, which the stuff with Kumi's drills in the back half, especially when she gets her arm ripped off and she just kind of stares at it, is just harrowing. Also, again, during the same scene of, like, Kasumi ripping through these monsters and, like, blood everywhere, it is just... It is, like... It is especially, like, the way that, like... It is, like, we have used the word visceral a lot. But, yeah, no, that is one of the defining words.
But, like, yeah.
You feel it. It is, like, both in the imagery and the way that even in the quiet moments you feel it in your blood and your bones.
I have both of those things.
Me too.
Sorry, I think I'm losing the plot a little bit. It's a good fucking series. I don't know. What else do you want to say?
Like, yeah. No, it is...
Watch it if you haven't.
Yes.
Read it if you haven't.
Yeah.
It's honestly... Like, even the usual thing that keeps people from watching, like, really good anime, which is that it's kind of long, doesn't apply here. You can knock the whole thing out in an afternoon.
Yeah. Did we, like, drop a massive content warning on this one? We probably should have.
I'll tell you what. We will, I could just do it myself, honestly. We'll record one after we're done recording this. I'll just edit it and put it at the start of the
absolutely.
episode.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that is one of the beautiful things about recording. Hey, if this podcast sounds much better than our old ones did, it's because we have own input audio recording now.
Yeah.
Meaning I don't have to do some weird shit with OBS.
Fancy.
You're welcome.
Swanky.
This too was the power of the drill plan. I don't know what I mean by that. Here's a joke for you. This and Gurren Lagann, very divergent opinions on drills.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no. Also, you know, like, very different opinions about what adolescence is.
Yeah.
It's like...
Yeah, that's also true.
Ooh, it's like, man, you know, like, this... Yeah, again, it's like, this, you know, honestly, actually, a unifying thing with several of my favorite pieces of media in general, but particularly the anime and manga, that Made in Abyss and Night on the Galactic Railroad of adulthood. Wow. Yikes.
Yeah.
Alien and spooky and weird, and a thing you have to reconcile yourself to, versus kind of the general gist of Gurren Lagann, to my understanding, is a very different attitude. Man. Wow. Well, there's some.
Gurren Lagann gets a little bit into some of this kind of stuff, but it's just not that kind of series. For
yeah.
Which is fine.
It's
fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Also, come on now.
I mean, also, you know, same folks responsible for Kill la Kill, which, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, it is.
No,
I don't understand the connection. Sorry.
Like another weird.
I guess that is
story.
Also.
Man.
I guess that does also involve alien symbiotes.
Yeah, alien symbiotes.
Spoilers. You know,
blood. A lot of blood.
A lot of blood. Kill la Kill has what I would describe as a happier ending.
Oh,
that's okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Do we have anything else we want to say, or are we good?
It's just like, you know, just reiterating the underlying point of that. This is, I like I sort of implied it earlier, is like, this is legitimately one of my favorite, if not my favorite, anime and also manga.
You know, yeah, no, like I don't feel that positively about it. I just really, really, really liked it. gonna be turning it over in the old noggin for a minute, probably, which is good. I like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it is absolutely one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I could easily see this being like somebody's favorite anime ever, easily. Like it's just it's one of those things where it just has a certain essence to it that you don't get with just any old show, and I think that means a lot.
Yeah.
Same with the manga. Yeah, it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the opening theme fucking slaps.
Yeah.
I didn't say that so far.
Yeah.
There we go.
Also, the other and the ending theme, as noted. Whoa. Also the lyrics, if you actually pay attention to them, of the opening and ending themes.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's something in there about, like, something like my changing body. I feel... It's like a love song, but it's very, like...
Yeah,
it's like also like a lament for lost youth. It's a very appropriate opening theme for this show.
And it's also the contrast in tone musically that both, the opening and ending sort of have while still having similar thematic content. In the opening, it's contrasted with the more upbeat sound with like these odd instrumental flourishes, but then in the closing theme it is much more downbeat and like the sort of the lines, the closing lines of it, I saw your true feelings, I felt, and then just trailing off.
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't paid close attention to the lyrics on some of the previous watches. But whoa.
I mean, it's an appropriate way for the song to end, because my understanding is like, we didn't cover emulators, and Next is the second sequel in this podcast, but my understanding is that both of those kind of end on cliffhangers also.
Yeah, there is no installment of this greater quote-unquote franchise is remotely... They all kind of end on this unresolved, hanging feeling that, like, again,
ain't that life.
Incomplete sentence.
Yeah. But this podcast will not end that way, because I am going to tell you goodbye. And thank you for listening. Farewell.
I will stop recording now.
Did we do it that time? I didn't hear one. Did you clap?
Yeah, I did. I clapped
I will.
On the
I will. If it's in your audio file, I can work with it. Okay.